Welcome. In this analysis, we are going to completely unpack exactly how small habits create massive success. We're looking straight at the foundational idea behind atomic habits. The source text we're deconstructing today takes this huge philosophy of massive transformation and distills the whole shebang down into one single powerful sentence. We're going to break this concept down piece by piece to really understand the hidden mechanics of human achievement. Okay, let's dive into this. The core question from our source material simply asks, how will small changes lead to big success? Now, this isn't just some rhetorical question. It's literally the ultimate formula for human potential. We spend so much of our lives absolutely obsessing over the finish line, right? The grand prize, that massive overnight overhaul of our lives. But this single sentence completely flips the script. It challenges the common assumption that massive success requires massive action. Instead, it posits a wildly counterintuitive idea that the truly monumental is born entirely from the microscopic. Throughout this explainer, we're going to dissect the exact anatomy of this very sentence.
So let's clearly define our terms based strictly on the text. What actually makes a habit atomic? Well, think about the word itself. An atom is the fundamental building block of all matter. It's microscopic. It's completely invisible to the naked eye. Yet under the right conditions, it contains an almost boundless amount of energy. An atomic habit is exactly that, a small change meticulously designed to create big success. It's an input so tiny it feels almost effortless, but it's structurally engineered to produce an output that can completely redefine your life. It's not just a minor tweak, it's the fundamental unit of a much larger system. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of what we're talking about here. The contrast between these two states is just immense. On one hand, you have a tiny, daily atomic habit. On the other, ultimate, massive success. The disparity between the two is almost impossible for our human brains to comprehend in the short term. We naturally struggle to see how doing something for just, say, 2 minutes a day could possibly bridge the gap to a complete life transformation. But that gap, that's exactly what we're exploring today. Let's isolate the very first variable in our equation. We're zooming in completely on the input, the small changes. I want you to really slow down for a second and think about this phrase, small changes. We are so culturally conditioned to glorify the hustle, the grind, the dramatic overnight transformation. But our source material pulls our focus away from all that noise, right down to the quiet, unnoticeable, unglamorous adjustments. These are the shifts that definitely don't make the headlines. They're the choices happening when absolutely no one is watching. They're so small they are incredibly easy to do, but, and this is absolutely critical, they're also incredibly easy not to do. Let's deconstruct what small actually looks like in practice. First, these are genuinely microscopic adjustments. We're talking about reading literally just one single page of a book before bed. Second, they're incremental daily shifts, like the simple act of drinking one glass of water right when you wake up. Third, and most importantly, these tiny inputs are the absolute foundation of all habits. I want you to pause and ask yourself right now, what is the absolute smallest, most effortless, microscopic adjustment you can make in your daily routine today? Because according to our source text, that incredibly tiny thing you just thought of, that is the seed of absolutely everything else. From small changes, this specific fragment of our core sentence is everything. Notice the word from. It points to a distinct origin point. Every grand achievement, every published novel, every marathon ever finished originates from this exact starting point. You simply cannot bypass the start line. The text makes it absolutely crystal clear. The small change is the unskippable prerequisite for whatever grand ambition you're holding in your mind right now. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it shifts our focus to the hidden mechanism. How do we actually cross the chasm between a super small input and a massive output? Well, the answer is the invisible force of compounding. It's the mathematical reality that habits are literally the compound interest of self-improvement. So the mechanism isn't some kind of magic trick. It's time, it's repetition, and it's the relentless accumulation of small advantages. The journey unfolds in 3 distinct, logical phases. It starts with implementing a tiny habit, executing that small change daily, and ultimately arriving at big success. It begins with a moment of decision, that structural setup where you pinpoint your microscopic action. Then comes the execution phase. This is where you actually perform that tiny shift, day in and day out, letting the repetitions quietly build up. And finally, the delayed, magnificent outcome is realized. It's a linear progression, a rock-solid formula that has to be followed in this exact order to unlock the result. How will it be achieved?
This part of the sentence is fascinating because it demands a highly practical answer. It's achieved because consistency creates a compounding effect that steadily, unstoppably builds momentum. The math behind it is just incredible. When you get just 1% better every single day for a year, you don't just become 365% better. No, you become 37 times better. That is the invisible bridge connecting your daily actions to your biggest goals. It's achieved not by agonizing over the finish line, but by quietly, powerfully committing to the daily system. That is the engine of achievement doing its work. Let's move to and see how this builds into our ultimate output, big success. This is the second half of our core sentence, the actual realization of the promise. Notice that the text doesn't say moderate improvement or slight progress. No, it boldly claims big success. It asserts that there is fundamentally no limit to the magnitude of the outcome, provided that atomic input is maintained and constantly fed into the compounding machine. Let's unpack the sheer scale of this success. We're talking about massive long-term achievements. We're looking at the ultimate, highest goals you have for yourself completely realized. This isn't just about getting slightly better at a hobby. This is about a fundamental transformation of your identity and your reality. And as we've noted, this immense, towering success is absolutely nothing more than the compounded result of those tiny, invisible changes we discussed earlier. It is the microscopic, multiplied by time, resulting in the absolute monumental.
Big success. I really want you to connect this directly to your own life right now. Whatever big success looks like for you, whether that's total financial freedom, peak physical health, mastering a complex new skill, or building incredible relationships, the source text is making you a direct promise. It's telling you that the magnitude of your dream is not too big, it's not too distant, and it is certainly not impossible. It's simply waiting at the end of a very long, very consistent chain of small atomic actions. The big success is already mathematically guaranteed if those small changes are honored.
So the crucial point is how these two timelines perfectly map onto each other. Think about the reality of today. Starting with small adjustments. It requires humility, doesn't it? It requires checking your ego and being willing to start unbelievably small in the present moment. But then look at the promise of tomorrow, realizing big success. The entire narrative arc of our analysis today proves that these two states are inherently powerfully and inextricably linked. You simply cannot have the massive outcome tomorrow without fully embracing the tiny reality today. Which brings us to the most important question of this entire explainer. We've seen the mechanics, we've seen the math, we've seen the undeniable link between the microscopic and the monumental, and exactly how small habits create success. So I leave you with this direct, urgent challenge. What small change will you start today to build your big success? Don't wait for some random burst of motivation. Please, don't wait for the perfect time. Find that tiny, effortless atomic habit right now. Implement it today and let the invisible power of compounding begin to work in your favor. Thanks so much for joining me for this analysis, and I'll see you next time.